With the regular season over and the playoffs in full swing, we now have the official order for this year's NBA draft lottery. And at the top, tied for the best odds to get the #1 pick and guaranteed to stay inside the top 5, we've got the Detroit Pistons, a team that this season was really nothing short of a mess. And even after this draft, that's probably not changing overnight. There's definitely no shortage of talent there. Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, Ausar Thompson, Marcus Sasser, Isaiah Stewart, and Quentin Grimes, who they recently acquired at the deadline. But despite so much of that promising talent, the rotation had a rotating door of vets that the team had no long-term plans for, and a bunch of former busts, like James Wiseman, Killian Hayes, Marvin Bagley, and Kevin Knox. Now, between some recent trades and roster cuts, there now appears to be a real path to roster consistency, but until that actually happens, it's hard to get too excited or really even have a good idea of where this team is in their rebuild. Hopefully, at least for the sake of Pistons fans, this selection, their 4th top 5 pick in a row, is able to change that. As of right now, it doesn't look like there's a clear, locked-in #1 prospect, but as we are inching closer, we are seeing 7'1" center Alex Sarr begin to stick out as the favorite, and ultimately ends up going here at 1 to Detroit. Now, the center position is definitely not at the top of Detroit's list of priorities, but really that doesn't matter, at least it shouldn't. Detroit's focus will be talent and value. That should be the focus for pretty much every team come the draft, but especially as you go up the draft board where teams are relying so heavily on the success of these selections. Right now, Alex Sarr is coming off his first season in the Australian NBL, where he averaged 10 points and 4 rebounds, shooting 52% from the field and 30% from 3. Numbers that on paper don't look like anything crazy, but let's make it clear. This season in the NBL, he's only strengthened his case for the top pick. The biggest thing that jumps out from his profile is his size. He's a legit 7'1" with over a 7'4" wingspan. Now, this is a draft that has a lot of top talent well over 7 feet tall, but what separates Sarr from the rest of the Giants in this class is his athleticism. He has both elite end-to-end and lateral speed for his size. He's also a really impressive vertical athlete, a combination that gives him a legit opportunity to be one of the most versatile and impactful defenders in the entire league. Something that, considering what we just saw from the Pistons rookie Ausar Thompson on that end, makes Detroit a really intriguing landing spot. For Sarr, it's clearly the defensive end that's making scouts so confident. However, most of his upside actually comes on the offensive side of the ball, where his elite speed once again becomes very apparent. This past year, and most likely to begin his NBA career, a majority of his attempts are coming off lobs and dump-offs right at the basket. But this seems like something subject to very significant change over time. He's shown off some impressive moves off the dribble, back to the basket, and while the efficiency wasn't anything notable, the form looks good and he looks confident from distance. There's definitely a lot of outcomes for his NBA career, but right now, all signs point to scouts believing this is the best balance of risk and reward in the draft. Right now is the best time of year for basketball fans. We just wrapped up the college tournament and now we get to watch NBA playoff games every single night, which by itself is already a ton of fun, but what makes it just a little bit more entertaining for me and my friends is cooking up and sweating out some entries with today's sponsor, Prize Picks. It's a pick'em platform that's really as simple as it gets. You just pick more or less on different stats, and you can win up to 100 times your entry. One of my favorite features that they have is flex plays, where you can actually lose one of your squares and still win, like this entry I did for the NBA season. Unfortunately, Josh Giddey did end up getting a tech, but because this was a flex play, I still turned 125 into 250. For my next entry, I'm going to be doing another flex play. I'm taking Chet Holmgren's rebounds, SGA points, and Jaime Jaquez points. Let me know what you guys are going with, and if you haven't checked out Prize Picks yet and you want to give it a shot, if you click that link in the description and use promo code JIMMER when you sign up, they will match your first deposit all the way up to $100. Thank you Prize Picks for sponsoring today's video. The second spot in the lottery officially belongs to the Washington Wizards. It's pretty much a foregone conclusion that if they were given the opportunity to grab Sarr, with how early they are in their rebuild and how laughable they were defensively, they would select him in a heartbeat. But here, without that being an option, they've got a decision to make. There's a few directions they could go, but the most likely seems to be them doing something very similar to what we saw a year ago. Go for upside, draft yet another French wing, 6'9", Zaccharie Risacher. I'm all in on Risacher, and I truly think, as we always see this time of year, so many people are overthinking these prospects. So much of the analysis surrounding Risacher, especially on things like draft Twitter, centers around his flaws. Despite great size at 6'9", He doesn't have absurd length. Despite great coordination for his frame, he isn't a jaw-dropping athlete. It feels like Brandon Miller all over again. Way too much of the conversation about what he can't do, way too little about what he can. This season, at only 18 years old, across 17 Euro Cup games, he averaged 13 points and 4 rebounds, shooting 57% from the field and 56% from 3. Now, across his 27 regular season games in the French League, we did see those numbers take a big hit as he went down to 10 points on 43-34 splits. When you combine his two averages, yes, he didn't put up earth-shattering numbers, but still really solid given his age and the level of competition he's playing in. Then while Risacher's lack of explosiveness is one of the more common conversations, he makes up for that with rare skill at this kind of frame. He has a strong, sometimes flashy handle. However, a majority of his production this season is actually coming off the catch. He is a really quick, really smooth jumper from outside. It's hard not to be confident in him being at the least a very productive three-point threat at the next level. Then when you look at his ability to consistently take advantage of that respect he's given as a shooter attacking closeouts, it starts to become very clear why he's being looked at as a #1 pick contender. There isn't a whole lot to be excited about in Washington right now, but at least a duo of Coulibaly and Risacher could give this fanbase some hope. I thought about making a mock right when the season ended, but I wanted to wait a little bit as I wanted to see the outcome of some of these tiebreakers, mainly this 3rd overall spot, which was a tie between Charlotte and Portland. And now we officially know this belongs to the Hornets, a team that at 3 grabs a guy that shot up the board over the last couple months, the anchor of the NCAA champion UConn Huskies, 7'2", Donovan Clingan, someone that looks like the perfect fit in Charlotte. It looks like they hit on their topic a year ago with Brandon Miller. The duo of him and LaMelo should lead to a pretty bright future for this team offensively. Defensively, however, there are some major questions for this current group. So ultimately, they decided to go with the best interior defender in all of college basketball. Now for Clingan, offensively there are some major red flags. He averaged 13 points, shooting 64% from the field. He's unstoppable right at the rim, but he's extremely limited beyond that. Now that's something we see across the league at this position, so the bigger concern is actually what we've seen from him from the free throw line. As a freshman, he shot just 52%, and while this year he was able to raise that, he still only managed an abysmal 58%. There's a very slim chance he ever becomes a significant floor spacer, but that's not going to stop him from coming off the board very early in this draft, as what he can do defensively has a chance to more than make up for that. Coming into this past season, he was already on the map for the draft. He was 7'2" with a 7'7" wingspan, coming off a really promising freshman year backing up Adama Sanogo. His potential was exciting, but very few were expecting him to ascend to one of the most dominant players in college basketball. In fact, I really think a valid case can be made that he just put together one, if not the best defensive NCAA tournament run we've ever seen. If you're not a believer on where his defense is right now, just go back and watch that UConn-Illinois game from the Elite Eight. Teams are forced to avoid him at all costs. He's by no means a stellar athlete side to side, but he's a lot quicker than people give him credit for, and between his length and ability to avoid fouling, teams were finding very little success trying to take advantage of him out on the perimeter. For the Hornets, this is clearly not a flashy selection, but very few players from this class are projected to have the immediate impact Clingan is. At the number 4 spot, we see the Portland Trailblazers, another team in a weird spot heading into this draft. They've got a lot of really solid pieces individually. Their backcourt is crowded with the likes of Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, and Fernie Simons. In the front court, they've got guys like DeAndre Ayton, Robert Williams, and Jeremy Grant. Having all those pieces and still being super early in their rebuild, it's pretty safe to assume they're going to be involved in some trades this summer. So while fit really shouldn't factor in here, because he's still projected to go in this range, they decided to keep things simple and just go with the versatility that comes with Colorado freshman wing Cody Williams, the brother of second-year OKC standout Jalen Williams. It's very clear why he's one of the top prospects in this class. He's 6'8" with a 7'2" wingspan. He can play up and down the lineup, and this year averaged 12 points while shooting a ridiculous 55% from the field and 42% from 3. At the NBA level, his floor is a valuable 3-and-D wing, but for the Blazers, they're still getting a lot of upside here. There's an outside chance we see a similar trajectory as his brother, someone that came into the draft much older, but now only in his second season is already one of the most versatile players in the entire league on both ends. Now, while you'll probably see Cody all over the place inside the top 10 on different mock drafts, with there being such little consensus right now in regards to this class, With how strong his scouting report is on paper, it's hard to see him staying on the board very long. The San Antonio Spurs are next up at 5, and they're without a doubt one of the most interesting teams heading into this draft for pretty obvious reasons. Victor Wembanyama just wrapped up one of the best rookie seasons we've ever seen. He's someone that single-handedly is going to raise his team out of a rebuild very quickly. That's exciting, but it also means there might not be too many opportunities left this high in the draft. This selection could end up being vital to where San Antonio's ceiling ends up. They're going to be going with value over anything, but here they're actually able to kill two birds with one stone. They address much needed playmaking, much needed ball handling, without sacrificing any value at all. They go with 18-year-old 6'6" Serbian point guard Nikola Topic, not to be confused with fellow Serbian players already in the league, Nikola Jokic and Nikola Jovic. Man, the Serbian national team is going to be a tough one for announcers. But Topic this season is a guy that absolutely skyrocketed up the board pretty much immediately after taking the court for Jokic's former club Mega Basket. Scouts had already been intrigued by his passing. He's the unquestioned top playmaker in this class. They were also intrigued by his size for the position. But once those intriguing attributes were now paired with elite levels of production, overnight, he started getting talked about as a top pick in this draft. While he only played 12 games with Mega Basket, he averaged 18 points, 4 rebounds and 7 assists, shooting 52% from the field. The three-point shooting wasn't ideal as he shot just 26%, but as we've seen time and time again, sometimes the three-point efficiency from these prospects, specifically in Europe, can be pretty deceiving. His career 87% from the free throw line should give confidence that his shooting won't be nearly the hurdle to overcome it looks like it is right now. This is without a doubt the team-player combination I want to see more than any other from this draft. We just saw how much Wembanyama really benefits at this stage in his career playing alongside a more traditional playmaker. The splits with and without Tre Jones sometimes didn't even seem real. It's what's made San Antonio such a fascinating landing spot for someone like Trae Young. But unless we're really about to see a scenario like that come to fruition, ending up with Topic seems like an ideal outcome. At 6, we've got the Toronto Raptors, who take yet another guy that shot up the board this season, 6'6" wing, Dalton Knecht. Knecht has a really unique journey to this point. He was completely unranked coming out of high school. In fact, he spent his first 2 years of college playing JUCO before transferring to Northern Colorado ahead of his junior season. As a junior, he averaged just 9 points a game, but he exploded as a senior, averaging 20 points and 7 rebounds on incredible efficiency. Now, despite that he had already played 4 years of college ball, he actually still had a year of eligibility left, so he transferred once again, this time to a much bigger program in Tennessee, where pretty much immediately, it became clear he was one of the top scorers in the entire country. On the season, he would average 22 points and 5 rebounds, shooting 40% from 3 on nearly 7 attempts a game. But those stats still don't even paint the full picture. Over his last 22 games, he scored over 30 points 7 different times, averaged 26 points, and shot 41% beyond the arc. Now, it's no secret that he's one of the oldest players in the class. At 23, he's the same age as guys like Tyrese Maxey and Zion Williamson. That should be factored in. But one of the hills that I will die on when it comes to the draft is that when prospects check all the boxes, especially when one of those is his physical profile, age is not nearly the concern people make it out to be, and it consistently creates value in the draft. We're not talking about Corey Kisperts or Jimmer Fredet's. We're talking about Jalen Williams, Mikal Bridges, Jaime Jaquez, Trey Murphy. Throw out the age for a second and just look at the player that Knecht is right now. He's a 6'6" 2 guard. While we don't have any official measurement yet, it's clear his wingspan is going to measure in much longer than that. He's a great athlete. He's an elite NBA-ready shooter that's production, especially out of the backcourt, was pretty much unmatched this year in college basketball. Yes, the defense right now isn't great, the age isn't ideal, but with how unpredictable the draft always is, it's confusing to see a prospect like Knecht, who's already proven so much, checks so many boxes, not being looked at as an elite prospect in this draft, but merely an old great shooter whose draft position is just an indication of how weak the draft is. That's ridiculous. Going to Toronto alongside Quickly, Barrett, and Barnes, they instantly become one of the more interesting teams to keep an eye on. The Grizzlies are at 7, a team that no one expected to be making a selection this high in the draft, even knowing that Ja Morant was going to be suspended for the first 25 games of the season. We saw Vegas expecting them to win nearly 50 games. They had a higher win total than the likes of Dallas, Minnesota, and OKC. But unfortunately, they were decimated with injuries. Ja Morant only played 9 games after that suspension. Marcus Smart played just 20, Desmond Bane just 42. Steven Adams got hurt before the year even started. A really disappointing outcome, but at least there's some positives to take away. I think most would prefer the injuries to all happen in succession like this, opposed to spread out across multiple years. This is a team that when fully healthy has managed to finish as a top 2 seed the past 2 seasons. Going into next year, they're expected to be right back in the mix once again, which makes this a very unique selection, but also one that's pretty hard to predict. Because of how competitive it will be to find minutes in their rotation, do they play it safe? Or do they take advantage of their unexpected presence in this range of the draft and go for upside that they probably wouldn't have had access to later in the draft? It's tough to say. I think at the top of their board, you're going to see names like Cody Williams and Donovan Clingan, but here, neither of them is an option, so we actually see them go with a really exciting selection, Kentucky freshman point guard Rob Dillingham, someone who has no shortage of talent. You know that milliseconds after watching him play. He has elite speed with the ball in his hands and sits atop the entire class scoring off the dribble. This year, he also really surprised scouts with where he is right now as a passer. He ended the season averaging 15 points, 3 rebounds, and 4 assists, shooting 48% from the field and 44% from 3. Now, while the talent and ability are very obvious, the flaws also are. He stands at a thin 6'2" and is bringing very little defensively. While his upside is definitely much higher, it's fairly likely his NBA career is spent as an elite 6-man. Again, that's not a given, but it also makes Memphis a landing spot that just might be a match made in heaven. At 8, we see the Utah Jazz end up with Kentucky guard Reed Sheppard, someone that quite literally shot himself up the board this season. Despite an unimpressive 6'3" physical profile, at some point, production cannot be ignored. Sheppard managed to finish with one of the most efficient seasons we've ever seen in college basketball, and he did that as just a freshman. He averaged 13 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists, while shooting 54% from the field and 52% from 3. That is absurd. Most can't do that by themselves in an empty gym. Scouts have zero questions about his shooting, but he also ended up exceeding a lot of expectations in several other aspects of the game. His ability as a playmaker makes him a legit combo guard, and his pesky defense on the ball has some confidence his size won't be the issue some have made it out to be. It's hard to see too high of a ceiling on his game right now, but if he manages to still be on the board here at 8, the Jazz are getting a lot of value. Speaking of potential value, the Rockets are at 9, and they go with someone that a year ago many projected as the #1 overall pick, Matas Buzelis. At the time, his stock was really easy to track down. He was a 5th-ranked prospect coming out of high school and was a true wing while standing at 6'10", a rare combination that is always going to have scouts paying very close attention. Now obviously, unfortunately his stock isn't quite where it once was. The skill's still really intriguing, but his production this year with the G League Ignite wasn't close to what we hoped for. He averaged 14 points while shooting 45% from the field, but the big concern is the shooting. He shot only 27% from distance and only 68% from the line. Now to be clear, while he definitely didn't help his stock in the G League, it's still very possible a team takes a chance on him much higher in this draft. The Atlanta Hawks are at 10, and they're going into the offseason with questions up and down the roster, especially in the backcourt, the direction they end up going in this draft. They grabbed 6'7" freshman guard for the NCAA champion UConn Huskies, Stephon Castle. The physical profile is ridiculous. He has a chance to be an elite perimeter defender who can comfortably play the 1 through the 3. He's an impressive shot creator going downhill and attacking the rim, but in his other aspects as a scorer, he has been pretty inconsistent. On the year, he averaged 11 points, shooting 47% from the field and only 27% from 3. Going into the NBA, he's going to be in a little bit of a weird spot. He's got this ability to slot into all these different positions, but his playmaking right now doesn't have many confidence he's going to be able to be a full-time point. But also, his lack of success outside makes him not ideal on the perimeter. Now, both of those things can definitely change with time. It's just hard to see him setting the league on fire anytime soon. But a player with a profile like Castle's, coming off an NCAA title as a freshman, seems like a great balance of risk and reward in this range of the draft. The Chicago Bulls are at 11, and they're yet another team entering the offseason in a weird spot. The future of Zach LaVine with the team is cloudy. DeMar DeRozan is a free agent, Caruso only has a year left on his deal, and we still have no clarity on Lonzo Ball's situation. With all of these unknowns, they end up going with one of the top shot creators in the class, 6'8" forward Ron Holland. An elite athlete that, just like some of the other prospects we mentioned, is truly just a jump shot away from being a locked-in top 5 pick. He lives above the rim, and this year in the G League averaged 19 points and 7 rebounds while shooting 47% from the field, but just 24% from distance and 68% from the line. In a lot of ways, his situation entering the draft reminds me a lot of Jonathan Kuminga's back in 2021. At 12, we see the Oklahoma City Thunder, and here, I've got a pretty controversial prediction. I've got them going with the back-to-back Naismith Player of the Year, 7'3" giant out of Purdue, Zach Edey. Someone you're going to see all over the place on draft boards, all the way from well into the second round to as high as the end of the lottery, like in this case. Now, this isn't usually what we see from someone that just averaged 25 points and 12 rebounds while shooting 62% from the field, but the concerns are pretty obvious. Despite being completely unstoppable in college, at the NBA level, not only will his size be more consistently matched, but there's a real chance that opposing offenses can exploit his deficits to the point he's unplayable. Teams today are constantly matchup hunting, which has demanded more and more ability defending on the perimeter from bigs, something that by no means is a strength for Edey and never will be. But with that being said, we saw a big jump from him in that aspect this year, which in combination with his ability to consistently play well over 30 minutes a night has started to give some people hope that he might not be bringing as much of an aging skill set to the table as it initially appeared. Now with Edey, we're probably going to know a lot very quickly. He's either unplayable or he's got just enough ability laterally to keep him on the court where he's guaranteed to dominate the interior. This isn't Taco Fall. His touch with both hands, his decent free throw shooting, and ability to draw contact are incomparable to all these other similarly built players people jump to compare him to. Now for most teams, drafting Edey, especially in this range of the draft, really doesn't make a lot of sense. He is boom or bust in every sense of the phrase. But that's exactly why the Thunder taking a chance might make a lot of sense. One of the things that makes this young Thunder group so exciting is their lack of traditional positional roles. No true point guard, a point forward in J-Dub at the 4, Chet Holmgren at the 5 who can create for himself beyond the perimeter. But while that versatility has been so vital in their success this season, it hasn't gone without concern. One of the biggest is their ability to match up with other top bigs in the league, something that playing in the same conference as Nikola Jokic can't be ignored. Then their rebounding struggles, which was a constant conversation a year ago, and while there's been some improvement with the addition of Chet, it's still a constant battle for this group. That's been on full display in the playoffs so far. By no means am I suggesting that the Thunder just abandon these small lineups, go away from what's been so instrumental in their success. But they're at a pretty unique position where it really doesn't hurt to experiment. The selection of Edey not only gives them the option to go much bigger, which really they can't do with this current group, but while it's extreme, he also allows them to quickly gauge how beneficial or detrimental added size would be. Honestly, in a draft like this, I don't see why you wouldn't take the shot. It's not going to be easy to get any player they select here on the court. This could easily be a wasted pick for them, but so what? They've got plenty of picks to waste. They've got 4 first rounders in next year's draft alone. Maybe I'm crazy, but I think this is going to happen. Then at 13, we've got the Sacramento Kings, who go with French forward Tidjane Salaun, yet another guy that isn't going here based on his current production. In the French league this season, he averaged 9 points and 4 rebounds, shooting only 37% from the field. Clearly unimpressive numbers. However, his potential can't be ignored. He's only 18 years old with a built 6'10", 7'4" wingspan frame. He's an elite athlete who also passes the eye test as a shooter despite what his efficiency suggests. The final selection of the lottery is once again the Portland Trailblazers via the Warriors. They went 3-and-D early with Cody Williams, and they actually do that once again, going with 6'5" Auburn freshman Jacoby Walter, someone that came out of the gates on fire, sending him flying up the board. At one point, he was being looked at as a locked-in top 5 pick by nearly every outlet. Unfortunately, however, things really turned in the wrong direction in the second half of the year. Come the end of the season, he had only shot 37% from the field and 34% from 3. Scouts have definitely not forgotten that really promising start, but that efficiency has caused him to creep down the board. And there it is, the official lottery order mock draft.